Well, welcome to this last and final session number 4 on traffic simulation and dispatching. My name's Philip Hoffer. I'm from the Jardine Schindler Group in Hong Kong. Okay, I'd like to announce the first speaker. We have TAK Mathews. TAK, come up. He's an interesting paper which will be Unravelling Destination Control Systems and a Practical Perspective. Thank you, TAK. Okay, TAK has close to 4 decades experience in the construction and vertical transportation industry and is the principal consultant at TAK Consulting. He is a representative on the Lift and Escalator Standard Committee and the Bureau of India Standards and the chairman of the Lift and Escalator section of the National Building Codes of India. He is also the founder of the Elevator and Escalator Safety Trust, EEST, India, set up in 2008. Thank you, TAK.
Thank you very much, Philip. All good? I've been planning to come to this symposium for about over 10 years now. And the biggest issue was the visa. And I had to go through a complicated process. And at one point of time, you need to have 3,000 pounds as a fixed deposit to get a visa to come here. I said, I don't have that kind of money. Finally, after many commitments to Elizabeth, I finally said, I'm going to go through the process. No deposit required. But I figured out that the UK visa is probably one of the most expensive in the world. For a 10-year visa, I had to pay 10 times more than what I pay the Americans. But anyway, I'm here and I've got a 10-year visa, so you can see me more often. Elizabeth, if you are here, thank you very much. I think I missed something by not being here often enough. The first sessions was really eye-opening, and I'm glad that I made it. And so let me just give my little bit of experience. So this is on destination control, and it's my experience. We went through a phase in about 25 years back, and honestly, we had no idea what we were doing. So the thing is, I've never been a salesperson. And I took up this job with a new elevator company. I did work for an elevator company before I shifted in. And I was told, okay, now we have no installations. You are a field person. Now you need to sell before you can start installing. So what do you go and sell? I mean, you just try figuring out what it is. So that's how I got into destination control. And to me, the way I put it across in very layman language, conventional system, you input the calls inside the car. Destination control, you input it outside the car. Of course, you could have hybrid where you do both. And this is where it all started. We went and sold the first destination control to a residential building. And trust me when I say that the only reason why it got sold and why it got adopted by the customer was this is something new. I mean, he had no idea what he was buying. We had no idea what we had sold. There's no denying it. And that's my life starting off as a salesperson. Subsequently, I realized that just not me. I think most salesmen are like that. And even worse now, selling boxes. You see that small red arrow? That's just about where I live, in one of the smaller buildings. So I managed to look at these buildings and say, somewhere along the line, we did get these elevators installed. But then subsequently, all these buildings, we did have destination controls put in. And in about 5 years, we had about over 75 installations running in India all around the country. And it was a learning process. On a sobering note, there were 2 of us who worked for that company who sort of went through this experimental route. A very close friend of mine, a colleague, very dear colleague, he passed away in July. And he used to be the go-to person when I had doubts about destination control, or if I had a little bit of doubt, I would go to him and discuss it. And the last discussion we had was sometime in March. And last month, he just passed away, just 54 years old. A very good guy in terms of technical competency, and he would really get into details. He also did become fairly good in traffic analysis for the company that he worked for. So I'm going to be talking about our experiences. Don't forget, naive people, blind, walking along a road and trying to figure out what is what. So first thing, we also had a complication that we had to understand the fact that, this is like a airplane. Seats are reserved. So you can't just walk in and then hope to find a place. And we realized it, then we had to explain it to the users that this is how it all works. Those of you who've seen buttons, people go and press buttons multiple times. I'm not going to go through all of them, I'll just pick up a few of them. With the destination control, people who were doing it figured out that it actually had an impact. They would get elevator service faster and reserved service because the elevator would suddenly figure out there were 20 people there or 30 people there. And suddenly you see this XX coming up. And the building was not even occupied. And people were complaining, saying that, we can't get calls. Incidentally, it's still happening. I mean, we have had buildings where people complain about not getting service. There are 3,000 people, and there are 20,000 calls. And everybody's trying to figure out what happened. And obviously, we know what it is. So again, we got a problem, so we're trying to figure out. So what we did is, we virtually increased the capacity of the elevators. We, had 200%, 300% loading. No problem, right? You can take as many calls as possible. Then we had another issue. People came and said that, listen, the car has been allotted to me, now the car is full. We figured out that we forgot to go back to the real loading of the lifts. Disability buttons. More often than not, the first couple of years, we had to disconnect it. Because they again figured out disability button. So the issue was not of a new concept. The issue was related to figuring out how to cheat the system. And this was like a perfect way of cheating the system. Then, of course, the next lift is not mine. I did my calculation as per me. That lift should have come to me, and it didn't come. We had issues where, simple keypad, 6th-floor building. There's a 7th and the 8th and the 9th floor. And what do you do with those keypads? Non-numeric floor identification. We had number of, it was initially keypad, remember. Listen, no, I want to label it G, L, O, whatever it is. We didn't have a solution. Power outage still is a problem where if you have an outage, you get released onto a floor, and by any chance there's a restricted flow, heaven help you. There's no way of getting out. So we came out with lots of solutions, and it's along the way that we learned a number of things. Like, for instance, the cheating the system, the multiple calls, we learned by mistake. There was a client who wanted these input terminals to be positioned outside the lobby because he had a turnstile, and he said, I would like the outside lobby because the lobby is protected area for me. We put it there, no problems, because the people would just press it, and then they would have to go in. That was a learning. So, we were just learning as we go along. It's probably only a little later that we figured out that destination control also does give you some traffic handling benefits. So there was this building, small building. Overnight, the population increased twofold. And I was like really scared. Listen, I'm not a salesperson. I was not a traffic analysis expert, and I had given the recommendation to the client. Everything was done, and suddenly the population has increased twofold. And I had all my fingers crossed. And it's actually, somewhere near to where I live. So I knew that I could get calls any time of the day. Interestingly, there were no problems. And it took me a couple of years to figure out why there were no problems. The people would be landing up in buses. So if it's X company, they would land up in a bus, and they would get all pushed to that particular floor. Grouped together and pushed to that particular floor. That made the difference. So let's look at some of the solutions that came up along the way, not just our naive solutions, on the way. And honestly speaking, even the company that I work for, they too were not too sure about what is what. Some of the people probably a little bit further to the east had a little bit better knowledge, but the main headquarters had really no knowledge as to what were the problems. Alphanumeric flows and lift designation, sounds good. Problems resolved, right? Now figure out what is 1 and what is 5. Figure out what is G and what is 2. Okay. And if that is not bad enough, so we try explaining to architects and developers that if destination control really needs to work, you need to make life easy for everybody. We need to have some rules. The lifts are all alpha. Your floor numbering has to be numeric. You cannot mix and match. So, I mean, I see people going there. Unfortunately, fortunately, in that particular building, there's nobody who is blind. Otherwise, I mean, I do not know what would have been happening. It's interesting that, you talk about the learning process and how they complain about the destination control without realizing that the problem has started because of the wrong application. Scrolling input terminals and touchpads. We have got very innovative. I mean, the elevator industry has become very innovative, and we've got great ideas. We forget the fact that at the end of the day, elevators are simple devices to move from A to B. All of you staying in this hotel? Second floor, third floor, how many of you? Right? I think it's poetic justice that we are having a lift symposium here, and we have to walk up the stairs. I think it's a great message to us that we forget where we are, what we are involved in. We are in the business of making life easier, not complicating it, not making it like a airline ticket counter. The replacement costs of these devices are phenomenal. This particular device that you see, 55 floors, 2 a floor on the upper floors, 4 on the ground floor. They're replacing all with cheaper devices. And overall, I think they are, the replacement cost was just about more than £1 million, because they've got multiple towers there. So, we need to be realistic. It's great to have great ideas and all that kind of stuff. DCS with position indicators, one of the issues that we had. So if you put a position indicator there, they sit and start calculating. As per me, that's the lift that should have come to me. We lose it. Input terminal positioning. Remember I said about that building where we figured out that this is the right way of doing it. You put it outside, people are forced to walk in. You avoid crowding the lobbies. Destination control is not exactly the best for average waiting time because the next lift is not yours. But then because of the walking that is involved, it sort of takes it away. But then we have a problem with walking times. One company does walking times after the door opens. That's when they calculate it. One does it when it's 2 floors above. There's no uniformity. So if I say, okay, put 5 seconds in, 5 seconds from what? 8 seconds from what? So every person has a different thing. 5 minutes lift. The first company had a hidden car operating panel. The next company didn't want to copy them, so they had a regular car operating panel. Either it works because it's a hybrid situation, in which case you cheat the system again, or it doesn't work, and then what happens? And the button is gone. So by the time the firemen want it, it doesn't work. The hybrid solution is touted as a great solution for your down peak situation, which I agree. Now, I've had a client who's got 2 buildings, one destination control and regular building, so our meetings keep shifting around. So we finish one meeting in the conventional building, I walk across to the next, and what happens? I walk into the lift and go up, and there's no call. Because, you are not thinking, you are not like, it's not like a airplane ticket where you look at the ticket, you look at the gate, you go through all this process. It's a no-brainer exercise, and that's something that we need to remember. Our job is to make it easier for the client. Another thing is, I'm just going to quickly go through it. How it works is you reduce the H and S in these formulas. This is from the National Building Code of India, which in some ways is a copy from SIPSI Guide D. You reduce the number of stops, you reduce the highest reversal flow, and you need a cooperative passenger arrival pattern. Now, I say this cooperative. Remember the building that I talked about where double the population, everything worked fine? But we know in real life that it's not necessarily always the case. I keep saying it. I keep telling the suppliers that DCS is not a cure for all ills. It can, at times, take care of a problem. Now, this is a reduced version of an actual project. Actually, there are 4 towers involved, 2 different suppliers. I'm not going to mention who gave the design or whatever it is. They had a huge problem. Average waiting times were in the 4 and 5 minutes, mind you, 4 and 5 minutes. And we had done a review of it just about 2 years after the projects were completed. We said they're going to have a problem. So during the lockdown period, there was a change of ownership. A Canadian finance company bought over those projects, and they said, okay, now we have a problem. What do we do? So these companies came up and said, okay, we'll put in destination control and the problem resolved. We did all our calculations. I mean, Elevate was our go-to. And we couldn't figure out how they had arrived at excellent average waiting time. So minutes it had come down into seconds. Then we figured out they were playing around with the average car loading. I mean, I know from my practical experience that all of us have, in commissioning stage, we do a 67 or a 70% maximum car loading. While when you do a regular up peak or a simulation or a conventional system, you do an average of 80% because you can load the car till, whether it's good or bad, that's a debatable subject. So for this particular project, they obviously couldn't do anything. I mean, excellent buildings, except from an elevator perspective. We actually suggested that instead of going through all the destination control, which again was, I think, £1 million per building was their destination control modernization package. We told them that you'll be wasting that £1 million because you're not going to get any benefits. We instead suggested, let's do one thing. Let's be a little bit more wiser about it. Up peak 2, again, Dr. Richard Peters' thing, where the elevators come down to the ground floor and you park with the doors open. We realized that that gives a better advantage, not it resolves the problem, than having destination control. And again, this is a reduced version because I don't want you to try to identify the project. How many minutes? 3 minutes. I'm done. Okay. I don't want you to identify the project, but this is actually what the situation was. Destination control. I mean, this is a lobby of an actual building which has been designed. Again, I don't want to get to know who the consultant is. 16 elevators in one line with a dead-end lobby. It's another subject that we could talk about. Okay, in conclusion, I firmly believe that DCS is the future of all lift grouping situations. If you've got more than 2 elevators, it is DCS. However, we need to be realistic in its optimization benefits. It cannot cure a situation if you do not have enough elevators. User interface must be simple, and it's just not for DCS. This is, again, a car operating panel. I've been to this building a number of times. I still have to try to figure out how to use this car operating panel. It's like a complex situation. I think I can book a ticket faster than I can use this. And standardization in passenger interface. That is crucial. Innovation is all good, but remember, elevator usage is a no-brainer exercise. I mean, today, even with the mobile phones and all, you don't go, you just think and then you are off to your destination. You're not going to think, oh, where am I? Who's this elevators? None of those things happen. Well, it's 25 years, and I believe that I'm still learning about destination control. Every day throws up a new challenge. Every day I find a new user who comes up with a different idea or a different thought or a different issue. And I also come across suppliers who have got excellent brainwaves in terms of what they could do with destination control. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tak. Very interesting. Any questions on the floor? Questions? Richard? I'm sure there has to be a question.
We keep discussing it often enough.
Okay, great. Okay, if there's no further...
Incidentally, just one last comment. So, about in 2010 it was, I was in the US for a conference, and there was this discussion on this great new technology which had come in. And what was it? They're talking about destination control. So after about 30 minutes, I put up my hand and said, underdeveloped, developing country, we already had 75 installed units running 10 years back. So I still believe that we were so naive to have gone in with this technology at that time. We had no idea what we were doing. The industry didn't have an idea what we were doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tak.